Okay, in this video, we're going to go from my codebook to a spreadsheet. And I've posted this codebook and I've posted the spreadsheet online for your interest. Basically, what we're going to do today is follow some of the things that we learned in Chapter 3. Chapter 3 has a lot of information which you don't need to know and have with you at all times. However, I'm glad all that information is there because then you can go to it when you need it. So here's my code book. I've taken my survey and I've given a code to each of my items. So each one has Q1 for question 1. I've told myself I'm going to recode question 10. And then I've given numerical codes to some of these responses, like a female is 1, a male is 2, freshman is 1, senior is 4. Likewise, I probably should put these here in red because these are the codes that I'm going to use for my Likert scale, 1 through 5. Okay, so my codebook's done. I've got that part of this ready to go. Next, I need to create a spreadsheet. And so I start here in SPSS, and SPSS asks me what I'm going to do. So I'm going to tell SPSS I'm going to create a new data set by clicking on that button up there. And here I go. As you remember from Chapter 3, SPSS has 2 sheets. So one of these sheets right here is my output file. And that will show the things that I create, like graphs, tables, means, and standard deviations. This other sheet right here is my data set. It's my data editor. And right now I happen to be in the variable view. Let me move the sheet up so that you can see. Do you see these 2 tabs down here? There's a variable view and then there's a data view. And they are different. It's important to start here in the variable view. Look at this. The variable view allows me to name my variables and then describe each variable. When I switch to data view, the names of the variables are listed up here at the heads of my columns, and then I enter the data in down here for each person. It's generally assumed that this is person number 1, person number 2. Occasionally, of course, we're not taking data from people. This could be plot number 1 and plot number 2. Let's go back to our variable view and let's start naming our variables. If you remember, my survey begins with my Likert items. So I have 10 items, and I'm going to go ahead then and put my 10 variables in here. Q2, Q3, and so forth. Now notice that SPSS gives me some default choices, that these will be numeric variables. Good, that's what I want. With a width of 8 and 2 decimals, I'm going to leave that as is. I feel like that's good. Now here in my label box, this box is so helpful. This is where I can put exactly what that variable was listed as on my survey. In fact, what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy all of these right here. So Control C. If you're on a Mac, you'll copy it differently. And then I'm going to paste these right here in my label box. Control V. Now I have exactly the wording that was associated with question 1. This is really nice, and this will be really helpful because later when I go to graph question 1, this label will show up in my graph and will be very valuable to my reader for understanding much more than just that this was question 1, but that this suggested to the respondent I complete all of my statistics assignments. But of course, my next important addition to this is the values. And so here is where I describe my Likert scale. And if you remember, 1 was strongly disagree. I'm going to add that to the box. I can't click on OK yet because OK means I'm finished. So I add number 2. I add number 3 to the box, and I'm just going to put, if we had more time, I would type it all out. Number 4 is agree, and number 5 was my strongly agree. We almost always want our higher number to indicate our more positive view. So it makes sense to put 1 as strongly disagree and 5 as strongly agree, because then when I'm listing means, the higher the mean means the more strongly they agreed with this statement. That tends to be somewhat intuitive for our reader. Okay, so I've got those values. I'm going to copy these and paste them into every other cell because I don't have to retype these every time. I do have to hit the copy and paste every time, but that's okay. All right, so you've got this idea that variable's here. I'm not going to worry about missing variables at this point because, quite frankly, I'm going to switch over to my data view if I'm missing something. So I have a 1 here, a 1 here, and a 3 here. Notice that my missing data just shows up as a little period, and I'm fine with that. Occasionally people like to give missing data its own special number, like a 9. And so if that were true, then I would get in here and define it as a 9. Okay, I'm going to leave my columns icon the same. I'm going to leave it right aligned. But now here in measure, I need to decide how am I going to define the measure of my Likert item. This is tricky. SPSS actually uses this to allow you to create certain types of graphs. So if I tell SPSS that my Likert items are scale, then I can create histograms of these. I can average these scale variables. I can come up with standard deviations for these. So there's a lot I can do with the scale variable. However, if I wanted to come into question 1 and make a nice bar chart of the responses, I would need to come in here first and actually change this to ordinal. And I know that's more information than you'd like to have, but just file that away somewhere to be retrieved later, maybe even in a year or 2 from now. That sometimes with these kind of Likert scale responses, I actually have to go in and redefine them as ordinal to get a certain type of a graph, and then I come back and I go back to my scale definition so that I can calculate other types of statistics that I can't calculate when they're defined as ordinal. It's one of the few, actually maybe I should say many, little tough characteristics of SPSS. Now, let me show you what I'm going to do with this variable that needs to be recoded. I'm going to define this as Q10R, okay? Q10R, and I'm going to write it as what I think would be the opposite. So statistics is worthwhile. And maybe I need a stronger word in there than worthwhile. Ponder this. I mean, what is the opposite of worthless? That's a strong statement. Maybe valuable. Okay, so now this will still use the same Likert scale, right? So I can still copy this and paste it in here. But I've already got numbers in here. Let's go to the data view and let's pretend like here I have 1, 4, 3, 5, 3, 4, 5. Okay, I've got these responses in here. Oh, actually, these are the responses. Forgive me, I made a mistake here. These should be the responses in item 10. Okay, so these are the responses in item 10. I can reverse score them by going into transform, and I can actually compute a new variable. Okay, so the variable I'm going to compute is this Q10R, okay, my target variable, and my target variable is going to be 6. Now, you're saying to yourself, well, where did she get 6 from? The way I came up with that number is to add the lowest response possibility, which in this case is 1 for strongly disagree, to the highest response possibility, which in this case is 5, strongly agree. 1 plus 5 equals 6. Then I'm going to subtract, and here's a little keyboard. I can choose subtract. And the thing I'm going to subtract is this right here, question 10. I'm going to click on it, and then click on this arrow, which brings it over into my box. And that is going to be my new Q10R. When I click on OK, I'm going to say yes, change the existing variable. And now I notice it's opened up this other window that tells me it's computed this new variable for me. And let's just look. Well, sure enough, my question 10 was a 1, now it's a 5. Where it was a 4, now it's a 2. My 3 stays the same. My 5 is now a 1. And this is the easy, quick, and dirty way to recode any items that you had entered from the negative perspective, in order to keep your respondent on his or her toes. Okay, so let's go back to our variable view. Let's look at the rest of our code book. We're going to need a variable for gender. We're going to need one for class standing. So here I can just type in gender. SPSS is very specific about it won't let you make a variable with more than about 12 letters in it. It won't let you have a space. It won't let you have any symbols, dollar signs, number signs. So that's why I called this class stand. And then finally, I think I have age. Okay, so those are my other variables. I can get in here and copy and paste the question, what is your class standing? What is your age? I can get in here and I can tell SPSS, well, my 1 is what was my 1? Let me just check. 1 was a female, just to make sure that later on there's no confusion. Add this to my box, okay. Now remember that gender is a nominal variable, so I'm going to put it in here as nominal. I'm going to go back to question 10. I want that to be scale. Class standing, if you remember, is an ordinal variable. There's a reason to order it. And age is going to be a scale variable because we can enter the age in. We don't have to put any values in here because what you see is what you get. If I enter a 57, that person was age 57. So hopefully this gives you a sense of how to create a code book step by step. Once you've entered these things, you've given them labels, then when you go to your variable view, your data view, let me switch out here. Now I have Q1, Q2, Q3. I need to enter in the rest of my Qs. I have gender, class standing, age. Now I can enter my data. And for this, I would recommend generally copying and pasting from Excel. I feel like that's the easiest way. There's a way to export and import data, but so often this method crashes that I just go ahead and copy and paste a certain number of cells, and it's quick and easy, and my spreadsheet's ready to go. I hope this is helpful for you. Please write to me as you're creating your spreadsheet with questions, and I'm looking forward to seeing the beautiful spreadsheets you come up with. Thank you.